Well, hello and welcome to Bernadette Hall Talks podcast, where we have real, raw conversations, healing conversations about grief, loss, trauma, pain, and ways of finding purpose after such pain. I want to welcome you all. I am Bernadette, and today we're going to be diving into a topic that affects every grieving heart: the impact of grief on the brain. Grief isn't just an emotional experience. It physically changes the way your brain works. If you've ever felt like, the moments where you can't think straight, you forget things, everything's too foggy, and you're like, what the hell is that? Why am I feeling like that? You're not alone. This is the brain. This is the impact of grief on the brain. So let's have a look at the science behind grief in the brain. So when you experience a massive deep loss, for example, loss of your child, loss of your loved one or your pet, something that you dearly love, do you know what happens? Your brain goes into survival mode. And studies have shown that grief activates the same regions in the brain as physical pain. That's massive, isn't it? So what's the science behind it, you're thinking? The anterior cingulate cortex and the insular is why we feel that pain. It's like heartbreak. And do you know what happens then? The amygdala, which processes emotions, goes into overdrive, making us more reactive, anxious, fearful. Do you know the fight and flight thing where you kind of want to fight or run? It's that's the kind of same thing. And then at the same time, the prefrontal cortex part of brain, which is responsible for logical thinking and decision making, shuts down. So you're then kind of like all over the place. And that is why it's really hard when you're grieving that you have memory loss. You can't concentrate properly, can't even do simple tasks. And even going and brushing your teeth or getting out of bed is just too hard. So let's think about the physical symptoms of grief. So I know for me, when I was going through the grief, when my son had died and, thinking about when my other wider family has died, just think about those feelings. You feel completely exhausted. Initially, you're on this kind of like high, because you've got the funeral and everything's high, excuse me, and you feel completely exhausted and you have brain fog or even the physical pain since your loss. It's not just in your head. Grief triggers a stress response and releases cortisol, which is a stress hormone, which causes fatigue, lack of energy, insomnia, really struggling to sleep. When you're kind of wide awake at night and it's like, I still can't get to sleep. It's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. You're there looking out at the window and looking at the moon and the stars and thinking all of that. And then what happens then? Changes in your appetite. So people either not eat, or in my case, when I was grieving, I did the complete opposite. I increased what I was eating because I was trying to feed those emotions, because I wasn't feeling it at the time because I was so frozen. But it also doesn't just do that. It also weakens your immune system. So you think about grief and trauma, like it weakens your immune system. So you're going to get ill. Your defenses go down. And if you leave that over long term, all that cortisol in your body and the stress, which is a stress hormone, leads to chronic grief, which can then lead to anxiety, depression, even higher risks of heart disease. So I always say, if you don't talk about how you're feeling, it's like swallowing poison. And that's an example. It is like swallowing poison on your body, on your brain. So what can you do to heal the grieving brain? There is good news. Grief changes the brain. Healing can also rewrite it. So here are some tips that I would recommend. And I'm doing it now, currently on the challenge that I'm doing this week. Today's my last day of the challenge, the grief challenge, and I'm massively into journaling. Journaling, when you write it down, and I know this, I've done it myself, and I know from speaking to other people I've worked with, they're the same. It releases memories. So memories that you had from the grief and the loss of your child or someone who you love, you repress them. Your body tries to keep you safe. So when you are in a space where you're feeling safe, you're journaling, stuff comes up again. And that's really important because it helps moving that process, being able to find joy again in your life after such a horrific thing. What also helps is mindfulness and meditation. It helps to calm down the overactive amygdala and regulate your emotions. And that can feel hard, especially when you're grieving, you know, sitting there thinking about, I need to do this and I need to do that. It's hard because especially when your mind is overthinking, do. That's really hard, but it takes time. The more you practice it each day, even if it's building up to 2 minutes, 3 minutes the day after, 4 minutes, or going to someone who can offer that support. And another one, what's going to release your natural endorphins, I'm massively into this, which counteracts stress and hormones, is exercise or movement. Big one into getting out into nature, going into the woods, getting lost in the wilderness, just going out for the day. So doing that. And what else are you thinking? Sleep, rest. That is essential for your cognitive function and that emotional resilience. And that is the resilience is a bit that's going to get you through and get you through the healing stages to be able to find joy. Because without the resilience and without that sleep and rest and that cognitive function, you're going to be stuck. And it's, like I say, it's going to then impact even more so on your mental health. Not leaving the house, not even getting out of bed, not eating. So what would I do then? If after, say, 6 months of you know, the grief and you're feeling like, actually, I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere, I'm feeling really, really disconnected still, is that I would be advising to get support. Get support from your friends and family, people you trust, but also grief coaching and support groups. It is key, and I can't say this enough, key is the key is connection and community. When you've got a connection and community and you're talking to other people who have gone through something similar to you, I promise you it's like gold dust. You're going to be like, wow. And then, do you know, I remember it took me years and years to be able to do that. And the people that I've connected with doing that are going to be friends for life. Honestly, they've met me in the worst places of my life, you know, and if I can do it, so can you, you know. So I just want to kind of think and you know, end with that grief is a journey that reshapes your brain, your life. But I mean, I also want to say time, but I don't want to say time because your grief never goes, it never leaves. But the more you're on top of it, accessing support, doing those stuff, what I've just said, it's going to help soothe your brain. And it's going to help you with your grieving journey. That acceptance, having connection, self-care is really important and the key components in the healing journey. And we've looked at this. Obviously, this is the first podcast that I'm doing, but I also want to let you know that there's going to be so much more. You know, if you're struggling with grief, please know that you're not broken. What you're feeling is absolutely normal. And I promise you, even though it feels like you're so isolated, alone in it, just reaching out and understanding a little bit around your brain why you're feeling like that, then you kind of will help you finding that joy again. So I hope this episode resonates with some of you. And if it does, I ask you to like, subscribe, and share, and let's create a community. So what am I going to be doing on the next podcast? What am I going to be doing? Well, you'll be finding out very, very soon. And I will be having guest speakers, professionals, people that have gone through grief, trauma, and loss and turned it all around with a sensational comeback. Thank you, my loves, for today. And thank you for watching. And make any comments or recommendations or things that you would love to hear and talk about. And I will see you very soon, Friday next week.